Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Coach Matt, EliteThrowsCoaching.com, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about something that literally affects all of us this time of year: the weather. Now, I don't know about where you live, but here in New England, we have had a very, very tough spring track season. We had snow in the very beginning of the season. We've had a ton of rain. We've had some heat and a lot of wind. We've had meets that have gotten canceled and rescheduled. Practices have been canceled. It has been a very, very tough season because of the weather. So the first point that I want to make to you is exactly that. We all have to deal with weather. You have to realize weather affects everybody. So it's not just you. And I think that's a really big thing that I need to talk about, is that weather doesn't just affect you. Don't show up to a meet if it's rainy or drizzly or the circle's a little bit wet or it's not ideal conditions. It's not just you that it's affecting. Your competition doesn't like it either. So everyone is on a level playing field. Don't feel like this is going to ruin your day and that you are going to have bad throws and that you are not going to perform to your best and that everyone else is going to beat you because you don't like the rain. Believe me, it's everybody. So don't feel like you are somehow at a disadvantage compared to all of your competitors because it's raining outside or it's really, really hot or it's really, really windy. Just like we talked about last week, the most important thing is that you need to be prepared for the weather. So the night before your meet, when you're packing up your bags, you're making sure you've got your uniform and your warm-ups, and you're making sure you've got your throwing equipment and your shoes and your food and all that stuff packed up. Take a quick look at the weather. See what the weather is going to be like during your track meet. If it's calling for rain, make sure you pack rain gear. If it's going to be really, really hot, make sure you put on sunblock or pack sunblock. If it's going to be really, really windy, we're going to go through some ways to kind of combat that a little bit, but be prepared. Be prepared for the weather because, like I said, literally there's nothing you can do about it. The first thing that you want to do is pack warm clothes and pack extras. So there is nothing worse than wearing a sweatshirt or wearing warm-up pants or sweatpants before you go to throw and it starts raining. And all of a sudden your sweatshirt, your t-shirt, your long sleeve t-shirt, whatever it is that you were wearing gets soaking wet and now you're stuck with it for the rest of the day. Make sure you bring extras with you, extra warm clothes, pack them in your bag, maybe even put them in a plastic shopping bag to keep them really dry, but pack them with you just in case. There's nothing worse than having wet socks, than having a wet sweatshirt or wet warm-up pants or sweatpants. Take those off if they do get wet, put on the warm stuff, the dry stuff, and you'll have a much better meet. It's important to also pack rain gear. So most of you were probably issued warm-up jackets and warm-up pants from your school. More than likely those do have a hood, but if they don't, you do want to pack a raincoat, something that does have a hood, something that's waterproof, that's going to keep rain off of you. The other thing that you want to bring with you when it is a little bit rainy or when it rained the night before are towels. Now, you do want to bring towels. Don't rely on the officials or on your head coach or whoever to bring towels. You want to bring your own towel so that way you can wipe off the discus, wipe off the shot, wipe off the javelin so that you get a nice, good grip on it to make sure that you're getting good releases and that ideally, even in a really kind of not so great weather conditions, ideally you are still getting a good grip and the shot or the discus is not soaking wet, covered in rain. The other thing that you might want to pack with you the night before are older throwing shoes. So if you've been throwing for a couple of years, more than likely you've worn a couple of different pairs of throwing shoes. And when you were a beginner, you probably had an entry-level beginner pair of throwing shoes. So those typically are going to have a little bit more texture on the bottom compared to the more advanced, faster throwing shoes. And they're also going to be a little bit softer. So if it is starting to rain out, if it is drizzling outside, if the circle is slippery and it's going to get wet, maybe putting on your old, softer, more gritty pair of throwing shoes is going to be a much better thing for you to wear when you're competing on a wet circle. All right, now let's talk about the 3 weather conditions that are really going to drive you crazy the day of a meet. That's rain, wind, and sun. All right, so here are just some general strategies in dealing with the rain. Number 1, if you are a javelin thrower, you want to research the night before wherever your meet's going to be. Are you throwing on a grass surface or are you throwing on a javelin runway? If you're throwing on a javelin runway and you wear javelin boots to throw, you definitely want to make sure that you pack enough spikes. So typically a track is going to tell you 1/4 inch spikes because that's what the runners are going to have to wear, and normally pyramid style. But listen, if it's really, really rainy outside, maybe try to get away with using a little bit longer of a spike, like a 3/8 inch spike. It's going to be a little bit longer, give you a little bit better traction. If you are throwing on grass, make sure that you are bringing longer spikes that you can put into your javelin boots. So 5/8 inch, 1/2 inch, even 1 inch spikes. If it's really muddy, really kind of choppy, gross looking grass that you're throwing on, make sure to bring longer spikes. The other thing that you can do is if you play another sport like baseball or football or soccer, wear the cleats that you would wear during those sports. So sometimes a javelin boot is going to be a little bit slipperier, even if it does have spikes in it, because the bottoms are normally, a little bit, I don't want to say smoother, but they don't have the same type of traction that like a football cleat would have. So if you are throwing on grass and it rained out and it's muddy or it looks like it's going to rain, pack those football cleats or soccer cleats or baseball cleats, whatever you have, because that might be a better alternative to javelin boots on that day. If you glide or rotate in the shot put, or if you throw discus, you may also want to try throwing in just your regular training sneakers. If the circle's really, really wet and you're not able to get good traction and you're slipping all over the place, throwing in your sneakers might be a little bit better option for you. I know you definitely don't want to throw in sneakers unless you absolutely have to, but sometimes if you're at a meet, the circle's really wet, people are going in and out without stomping out their feet, it's getting muddy, they're trying their best to sweep it off, but it's just not working. Putting on your sneakers is sometimes a little bit better of an idea. And even if it's something where it doesn't feel right, at least you'll have a little bit better traction and maybe get off a couple of good throws. Now finally, we already talked about bringing a towel to wipe off the implement, but I would actually bring a second towel as well that you keep dry until you're ready to compete. Now why is this? Say you're throwing shot put. You throw the shot, it lands, it gets really muddy, it gets really wet. You take your towel, you start to dry off the shot, and now that towel is wet and muddy. Well, if you've got 6 or 7, 8, 10 other kids in front of you who now have to get in there and throw, that towel is going to get soaked and your shot put or your discus is going to get soaked. So have a dry towel with you. Take your shot put it in that dry, warm towel, and put it back in your bag until you are ready to compete. All right, so that takes us on to wind. Now, maybe if you live in a really windy area, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, a really, really windy state, maybe you have had track meets canceled because of the wind, but I can honestly say I have never seen a track meet canceled or heard of a track meet canceled because of the wind. Cue the people that are leaving their comments right now down below because their meets have been canceled due to wind. So when it is windy, you're going to have to deal with it. Now, there are some strategies, especially in the javelin and in the discus, of how to deal with the wind. I don't really want to get into those right now because a lot of people have different ideas regarding what to do when it is windy. They do make certain javelins that are either designed for a headwind or for a tailwind. Typically, those are very advanced javelins like 70, 80, 90, 100 meter javelins that the elite of the elite throwers will use. These are your top NCAA throwers, Olympic trials, Olympic level athletes will use those javelins because they are stiffer and have a higher meter rating. If you're throwing, say you're a guy and you're throwing under 200 feet, or if you are a girl and you're throwing under 140 feet, more than likely it's not going to make a big difference whether you use a headwind or a tailwind javelin, or if you use a javelin that has more of a cone, like a conical shape to it, or one that has more of a defined point to it. It's really not going to make a huge difference. There are strategies if there's a headwind or a tailwind, how high of a release angle, low of a release angle. You can look all those videos up here on YouTube. There's a lot of info out there, and no one seems to have their story straight. Same thing goes with discus. They do make discuses that are kind of considered for like a windy condition discus, but really all discuses need to be within the same parameters. They need to be within a certain diameter, within a certain thickness from top to bottom, within a certain rim thickness. It really does not make a huge difference. Again, unless you're throwing like 180 feet and above and you're a guy, or you're throwing, 150, 140 feet and above and you're a girl, it really doesn't matter if you go from, say, a 75% rim weight to a 72% rim weight because it's windy. It's not going to make a big difference, okay? Again, there are strategies of what to do if it is windy, throwing into the wind or throwing kind of with the wind at your back, or if there's a crosswind from right to left or left to right. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Again, no one seems to have their story straight. There's a lot of theories out there. There's a lot of people who say one thing and a lot of people say the other. Research that on your own. And finally, the one that we always have to deal with this time of year is really hot, sunny days. Now, if it's cold where you are, like right now, it's only like 40 degrees outside here. It's raining out a little bit. You are probably keeping your fingers crossed that the sun is going to come out and that it's going to get warmer. But what always happens? We get to the end of May, beginning of June, the championship meets. All of a sudden, 90 degrees, super hot, super sunny, super sweaty. It's gross outside, and you have to deal with it. Well, here are some strategies to deal with the sun. And the first strategy I'm going to give you is that you need to stay hydrated. This means packing extra bottles of water. This means constantly refilling your water at the water stations, at the track meet. Make sure you are drinking a ton of water. You want to keep drinking water until you pee clear. Yes, you heard me right. You should be peeing clear. That means you are hydrated, and you want to make sure you hydrate the night before and also after the track meet. When you get to the meet, if it is really hot and really sunny, find a shady spot. A lot of schools now have those big easy up pop-up tents. Get under that tent and stay there. If there's trees, if there's shade, get in a shady spot and stay there. Do not be one of these guys who their teammate comes up and grabs them and says, "Hey, why don't we don't throw for 2 hours. Let's go watch the javelin guys in that open field in 90-degree heat with no shade, and we'll sit there for the next hour." Or, "Hey, let's go to the top of the bleachers and hang out with so-and-so for the next 2 hours until we throw." Don't be that guy. Sit in the shade, chill, relax, meditate, visualize, all the stuff that we talked about in last week's video. Find a shady spot and stay out of the sun. The other thing you need to do is put on sunblock. Do not be one of these kids that walks around with bright red lobster skin. Put on sunblock. Don't be a tough guy, okay? I have seen it in all of my years. You get the girl who has very, very light, fair skin that last summer went to Florida and got a good tan. So she thinks, well, I'm just not going to put on sunblock because I'll get a good tan like it was in Florida. That's not the way it works. You are going to get burnt to a crisp. Guys, we see this all the time. You can walking around with your track uniform on, trying to show off the guns. You're like, oh, I'm going to get a little bit of a tan today. All of a sudden, you're outside in the bright sun and the heat for 3 hours, and now you're burnt to a crisp. Put on sunblock. They make aerosol sunblock now. We've all seen it. That way you don't have to get sunblock all over your hands and get your hands greasy. Spray it on, reapply, stay out of the sun. Other little stuff too, make sure you're wearing a hat to keep the sun out of your face. They make, again, hats like crazy. There's hats for golfers. There's the big brimmed hats. You're down south, put on a cowboy hat, whatever you got. Keep the sun off your neck. Keep the sun off your face. And maybe even get yourself a little battery-powered fan just to stay cool in between throws, or when you're just chilling there in the shade, get a little bit of a breeze going. All right, that's it, everybody. Real simple stuff to combat the rain, the wind, and really hot sunny days. Keep yourself prepared. Make sure that you are bringing these things with you to the meet. Pack them the night before, and you will have a much better time dealing with bad weather. But remember, we all have to deal with bad weather. We all are affected by it. It's not just you. Don't get freaked out if it's going to be rainy. It's happened to all of us. So make sure, be prepared. Get your rain gear. Get your, sunblock. Pack a hat. Pack some extra clothes. And you'll be fine. You will be good to go.